Alright, welcome back to Hoop Hierarchy. This is Casey coming back to you with the final video in the ranking all number one overall picks by their careers tier list series. So for anyone who's not seen this series before, it is a pretty straightforward series. I'm going to be looking at players that went number one overall in the NBA draft all the way back to the beginning of the NBA and ranking them by how well they lived up to the hype during their career of being a number one overall pick. So, I'm not doing a deep dive on players' play styles in this. What I'm doing is kind of just going over players here, there, kind of talking about where they came from, how they got to where they are today, and how they became the number one overall pick, and then what they did with being the number one overall pick. And so the tiers will be as follows. S tier is an elite Hall of Famer type player who exceeded expectations of being number one. A tier is a multiple time All-Star who met the hype of being a number one overall pick. A B tier is an acceptable but probably a minor letdown type player. A C tier is a player who maybe became a solid-ish role player, but was definitely a disappointment for a number one. And then F is a bad player or just did not play, and just a huge disappointment for being a number one overall pick. And for this series, we have 3 additional tiers because there are a few guys at the very end of this tier list that they haven't been in the league long enough to have a conclusive tier list ranking for them. So they will be in these 3 tiers. So it's basically laid out like this. So the first one here is inconclusive A. That's a player who we're not sure, but so far they have shown really, really good things. A B tier for inconclusive is they're good, but again, inconclusive, we're not sure, and they've shown some red flags here or there. And then C is a player who, again, we don't know for sure, but right now things are not looking like they're going to live up to that number one overall pick spot. But now that the groundwork has been set, we're going to start out with the number one pick in the 2011 draft, Kyrie Irving. So, barring the personal controversies that Kyrie has, you cannot deny the fact that Kyrie has been a staple in the NBA since joining the league. He was born in Australia, and he moved back to the U.S. as a child. Over time, he became very talented and put up numbers for Montclair Kimberly Academy as a freshman and sophomore, before transferring to play with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in a more talented high school division his junior and senior year. So he averaged 24, 7, and 5 as a senior and committed to Duke as a 5-star. Now, he didn't play many games for Duke as he missed a good portion of the season with injury, but the talent he showed got him drafted number one overall anyways. He quickly got going as a talented scorer as a rookie, averaging 19, and progressed to the point where he was a perennial 25 points per game, 8-time All-Star, multiple-time MVP, NBA champion. He hit one of the biggest shots in finals history in the process. This might be a bit of a bold take because I don't know if everyone's going to agree with this, but I think Kyrie is an S tier. I was bouncing around putting him A tier, but he has just been such a productive player for such a long time. It is borderline, but I am going to say S tier for Kyrie. Next up, we have Anthony Davis. So, I just remember how hyped Anthony Davis was as a prospect. I think he's lived up to that personally. He was born in Chicago. He hit a major growth spurt from his freshman year to his junior year. He went from below 6 feet tall up to 6'8", and he kept a majority of his agility and guard skills along with this, and the combination of those factors made him the number one prospect in his class. He had a competitive recruiting battle, ended up committing to Kentucky. He came into the league, and the only thing that really can be said that has held him back is his injuries. He has been sporadically hurt here and there throughout his career, but when he has played, he has been an absolute game changer. He is arguably the most talented power forward to ever play, even if his greatness level doesn't match some of the best ever, like Duncan or Dirk. However, he's a perennial 25 and 10 guy, typically well over 2 blocks a game. He was an integral part to the bubble championship as well, whether you want to count that or not. Some people give that an asterisk, but I'm saying that counts for something. So I see no real reason he should not be classified as S tier. So next up we have Anthony Bennett, and most of y'all know where this is going already. So Bennett was born in Canada, developed to the point where he could attend Findlay Prep in the U.S. For his high school career. He kind of leveraged that into being ranked in the top 10 for ESPN recruits and decided to play close to where Findlay Prep is located. He stayed at UNLV. In college, he was not particularly dominant, as he averaged 16 and 8, which is not terrible, but again, not super dominant or anything. Also missed some games due to injury, but he was very efficient and athletic. So the Cavs thought he was worth the number 1 pick, and he was a shock selection at number 1. Really, no one mocked him to go there, and he didn't really prove anyone wrong either, as he was pretty bad from the beginning in the league. He was just nowhere near as efficient as he was in college. Only started 4 games in the pros. He averaged 4.4 points per game for his career. Arguably the biggest bust in the modern era. He is easily F tier. Next up, we have Andrew Wiggins. So I still remember the days where they were calling Wiggins the next LeBron James. Realistically, he never really fit that billing, but he has done a good job of reclaiming a bit of a career after a somewhat rocky start. He was born in Canada to a former NBA player and a track sprinter. He was a phenom in high school. I mean, he was the focus of many a magazine cover and YouTube highlight reel. He was ranked number 1 over a similarly hyped Jabari Parker, and he ended up at Kansas. For a freshman, he was really solid at Kansas. He averaged 17 and 6, became a semifinalist for the Naismith Player of the Year as a freshman. Pretty much inevitably because of this, he was taken number 1 by the Cavs. And even after all that hype, he never played a game for the Cavs. He got traded for Kevin Love that same summer. Wiggins never, again, like I said, never lived up to the hype of being the next LeBron. But he was okay. He was at most an inefficient volume scorer for a bad Minnesota team, but he got moved to Golden State, became a key piece for a competitor, found a role he fit better in, somehow made an all-star game as a starter because some K-pop singer told his fans to vote for Wiggins or something. That's neither here nor there. Nevertheless, I'd say he is B tier. A good career so far, but not what he was supposed to be. Next up, we have Karl-Anthony Towns. So, there's a really talented young big born in New Jersey. Towns was seen as one of the next generation of skilled centers. He was a top recruit in his class, ended up on a stacked Kentucky team with Andrew and Aaron Harrison, Trey Lyles, Devin Booker, Willie Cauley-Stein, Dakari Johnson. He distanced himself as a prospect, though, from them, went number 1. Towns has been mainly a big stat sheet guy in his career, put up solid block numbers and great scoring and rebound numbers, but never became a real difference maker when it came to winning games. Also a bit injury prone. I was tempted to put him in B tier, but he is a multiple-time All-Star and a 2-time All-NBA player. He's put up the numbers, just hasn't translated that to winning. I will say A tier for Karl-Anthony Towns. So next up is Ben Simmons. This is a bit of a difficult one because I'd be lying if I were saying that Simmons wasn't a really good player for a minute there. He has just fallen off a cliff totally. Out of Australia, Simmons moved to the U.S. in high school to play for Monteverde Academy. He was the number 1 recruit out of high school, and he chose to play for LSU over interest from just about everybody. He averaged 19 and 11 for LSU, was billed as some sort of power forward Magic Johnson kind of thing coming into the draft. However, even at this time, people were questioning his work ethic and attitude. He still went number 1, but he missed his rookie year with an injury. However, he did come out the next season, win Rookie of the Year, averaged 16, 8, and 8. Over the next couple of years, though, he started to get injured more and more. His playoff collapse for the 76ers in 2020-2021, where he was scared to shoot literal layups, was the end of his Philly career. It has been a nightmare to deal with ever since, with questionable injuries and a bad work ethic, like was one of the concerns coming into the league. Yes, he was talented and productive for a few years, but I would be really disappointed if I were the team to draft Ben Simmons number 1. So he is going to be C tier for me. So next up we have Markelle Fultz, and he is going to be the beginning of the inconclusive portion of this tier list. So he's going to slot in one of those 3 bottom slots down there. So basically, Markelle Fultz was the number 3 point guard in high school, chose to play for Washington because he was hoping that Marquise Chris and DeJounte Murray would be there. Both got drafted, however, and he ended up the only guy on their team, basically. The Huskies had a bad record, but he got to showcase his skills on that team, and in turn, he averaged 23, 6, and 6. The consensus became that he was the number one pick type player and was a number one pick type quality player. We never really got to see peak Fultz, though, as his injury issues were pretty bad. He played very few games for Philadelphia, who drafted him. After looking okay in his first fully healthy season in Orlando, he missed most of the next 2 seasons for them as well. So most people at this point probably thought his career was just done and over with. But this season, he got back up to 60 games played, looked the part of an above-average starting point guard. He averaged 14 and 6. I think if he could build on this, he can have a good career. I will leave him an inconclusive C for now because he hasn't really blown me away when healthy. But he has a chance to salvage that career, I think. Next up, we have DeAndre Ayton. So, as the guy drafted over Luka and Trae Young, Ayton has a high standard to live up to. I don't think he will live up to it. But, born in the Bahamas and being the number 3 recruit in high school, he averaged 26, 15, and 3.5 blocks as a senior. Chose to play for Arizona, became first-team All-American as a freshman, and looked every part of a dominant big. However, in the pros, his game can only be described as good but unremarkable as far as being a number 1 overall pick goes. His best season was his second. He averaged 18 and 11. But people have always considered him a guy that isn't living up to the hype, with guys after him being mentioned in MVP conversations. He hasn't improved much at all. He was basically removed from the lineup for Jock Landale this postseason. I'm not willing to say he's inconclusive C, as he has been statistically pretty good. I just think that he really needs a change of scenery. I'm going to say he is just barely inconclusive B, disregarding recency bias. He has been pretty good. Next up, we have Zion. So, Zion is a high school mixtape legend, one of the most fun players to watch in recent memory. He came out of Spartanburg High School as a complete phenom who averaged near 40 and 10 as a junior and senior in high school, and went to Duke as the number 2 recruit with the other top 3 recruits, R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish, joining him. At Duke, he became the ACC Player of the Year and solidified himself as the best prospect in the class. Here's the thing, though, with Zion. When playing, he is a force, easily has the potential to be right up there with one of the best power forwards in the NBA conversation. His health issues are a huge deal, though. He has missed too many games to the point to where the possibility of him ever coming back and being a long-term dominant force is coming into question. I mean, his second year he averaged 27 and 7, but he hasn't played over 30 games in either of his other 2 seasons. I hope he manages to get healthy because he has been great when he's playing, but for now, I'm going to be putting him in inconclusive B. Next up is Anthony Edwards. So I'm just going to come out and say he looks like the best of the guys that are in the inconclusive portion as of now. The only one that has come across as a guy who can be both healthy and a bona fide number 1 on a good team. Edwards is just really good and fun to watch. A guy who was super athletic as a kid, both excelling in football and basketball. Kind of hit a meteoric rise from being a 4-star his junior year to arguably the top prospect in the country as a senior. He went to play for Tom Crean at Georgia, and there he was an SEC Freshman of the Year, was a finalist for the Jerry West Award for the top shooting guard, and in the NBA he has gotten better season over season, starting at 19 points per game, up to nearly 25 this year. Looks every part of one of the best shooting guards in the NBA. He fits right at the top of the inconclusive players tier list at the inconclusive A tier. Next up, we have Cade. So, Cade Cunningham, in the limited amount of time we have seen him, has looked good. He played for Montverde and looked like the leader of a completely dominant team. Went to Oklahoma State even when they were in the midst of a postseason ban, and there he averaged 20 and 6 and only solidified his place at the top of the upcoming draft. His career has been short so far, as he almost entirely missed this most recent season, but it is way too early to say he is injury prone or he has been a disappointment or something. He's averaged 17, 5, and 5 as a rookie, and those numbers have been improving up until the injury this past season. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say he's an inconclusive B. He's shown enough that I think he is a valid selection there. Finally, we have Paolo. So, most recent number 1 pick taken, Paolo was my personal favorite prospect in this past draft. I wasn't getting all the talk of him going behind Chet and Jabari. I thought at the time that Orlando made the right decision. And in his first season, he's done nothing to dissuade me off of that opinion. As a top 2 recruit that summer after a successful high school career, Paolo made his way to Duke, became first-team All-ICC on a pretty solid Duke team. Not a whole lot to say about his career yet. It just started, but he looks good. Rookie of the Year, having just a monster rookie season, one of the better ones in the past few years. And, I can't put him at the top tier of the inconclusives because it's only been one season. Like I said, he does look very promising. Paolo is going to go inconclusive B as well. And so that finalizes this tier list series. So anyone who has watched this series, whether it be just this video or all of the videos in the series, I appreciate any support you have given. If you guys have enjoyed this series, go ahead and let me know down in the comments section. I know a lot of people who have been coming to my channel have been coming because of my draft prospect deep dives, which really enjoy doing those videos as well. But if you guys have any video ideas, go ahead and put them in the comments. I appreciate any feedback that I get. If you like this video or you didn't, don't just hit like or dislike. Sure do that, but put it in the comments too. Let me know how you feel about the content. With all that being said, there's plenty more content coming, but I hope you guys enjoyed this one.